do you make of the selective effort of politicians to say some groups can protest, other groups can't? What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think it's ethical. I don't think it's moral. I don't think it's just. I don't think it's the Canadian way. And I think it has to stop. And I think that everybody, all Calgarians, need to sort of look at the different perspectives, because that's what we're missing right now. Turn off your television, your social media, whatever. Talk to people. Talk to people that come down here and have for the last almost 3 years now, and see what's really going on, because that's how we're getting our reporting. It's boots on the ground to see what's going on. And this has to change, because people aren't going to stop coming to the rallies. I mean, they're just not. We can't. Once you've seen the light, there's no going back to the darkness.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News, and we are under week 4 of Jyoti Gondek and the City of Calgary's injunction against protests here in the City of Calgary, but that has not stopped people from showing up. The event is just getting underway here. There are already a few hundred people here today. People over the last 2 weeks have largely been left alone to protest here in peace. We have seen people being ticketed on the road for honking. We're going to follow up on that and see if there's any more of that today. Later on, we're also going to swing over and visit Pastor Derek Reimer, who, aside from the protest, has his street ministry ongoing with Mission 7, to see if, unlike last week when police arrested him, the police will leave him alone. Again, this is the 4th week of this injunction seeking to stifle free speech and protest in Calgary, to limit the rights of these people who are standing up against vaccine mandates and COVID-19 restrictions, but they aren't going anywhere. So I'm here with a man who needs no introduction, our perennial one-liner who's here every week. His face pops up like a flower. What do you make of week 4 under this injunction? Folks still coming out, still taking a stand. What's the energy like here today?
The people here understand that we are the power and that our voices is strong, and the amplification that they have removed from us is of no matter, because the thousands of people, their voices shall rumble through the prairies.
Rumble through the prairies. There you have it, folks. So another face that needs no introduction, Nathaniel Pawlowski, son of Pastor Artur Pawlowski, running into you here. I thought we'd just touch base, see how your dad's doing. I know he loves to be out and about. He is under those strict bail conditions, stuck at home other than when he goes out for worship. How's he doing?
He's doing good. He's glad to be out of that hell, if you will. But he's asking people to not forget that he's still a prisoner. Mm-hmm. He's not free at all, by any means of the word. He's on house arrest, only allowed to come out for his church service on Saturday mornings. So he did that this morning. It went really well. He's glad he's at least allowed to do that. But he's still serving time for something that he would have been sentenced for a maximum of a month and a half. That's what the prosecutors were offering, a month and a half. That's what he would like, if convicted, that's what he would serve. And he's already served 51 days, mostly in solitary confinement, which counts to a time and a half or 2 times that time served. And now he's serving even more time. Yeah. It makes no sense, and it's ridiculous. So he's not happy about that he still has to serve time for something that he's not guilty of, and he hasn't been found guilty of.
Yeah, clearly there's something afoot here. He's already served more time than he'd ever be sentenced to or served as sanction if he was found guilty on all the allegations against him. Extremely troubling. We did have that interview. Hundreds of people have reached out. Tens of thousands, if not more, people have watched that, and it really reached a lot of people's hearts. There was some good news there. There was a bit of a breath of fresh air, a little bit of a reprieve. But I want to remind people at home, like you said, it's so important. Pastor Artur Pawlowski is likely to be fighting for his life in court for years to come. So if you want to help his legal fees, keep Sarah Miller of JSS Barristers working tirelessly to free him and to clear his name, chip in at saveartur.com. So the crowd here in downtown Calgary at City Hall has grown gradually to about 500 or so people. We've seen no enforcement. There have been some vehicles driving by and honking, but we haven't seen the usual police presence, police chasing them down, handing out mass tickets. Now, it remains to be seen if that will start later. Sometimes police begin that type of enforcement later in the day. But for the time being, at least, as we're about halfway through this protest, the speech portion of this protest, there's been no enforcement, no issues, and no arrests. So you are a familiar face. You're always out here dancing, spreading the love, this positive message. Despite this injunction being in place for 4 weeks, you've been here. People have been here standing up for freedoms. What's the vibe been like? What's the energy been like among the people that you're speaking with?
Oh, amazing. These are the greatest people you'll ever meet. We're just full of love. We just want equality for all. These have become my best friends, my family. I look forward to Saturday every week.
What do you make of this sort of targeted hammer down exclusively on this one group of protesters who has been peaceful for 2 years?
So unfortunately, like as we were talking about just before the interview, I've been out in Ontario protesting with the Freedom Convoy movement out there since February 13th. I just got back last night. So I've only been hearing through the grapevine about what's been going on back here in Calgary, but I know from my own experience of Antifa violence and whatnot that I think that was what was used as a pretext to clamp down on our rights for peaceful assembly and the right to protest. And yeah, I don't know, what can I say? I mean, we're after what the truckers and all the other freedom fighters in Ottawa did, standing up for our freedoms, getting bludgeoned by the police, pepper sprayed, rubber bullets, everything else. It's the least we can do to stand here and take whatever our tyrannical governments want to mete out. And do so peacefully, do so lovingly, and expose them for the tyrants and dictators that they are.
Now, when that was going on in Ottawa, we were obviously looking on in horror. From being away from Calgary during this, is the rest of the world very much looking at Calgary with these injunctions and these limitations as what's going on in Calgary?
So I don't know about the rest of the world, but I know certainly in the freedom movement in general, people, can't believe what they're seeing coming out of Alberta, which used to be the freest, one of the freest, if not the freest, and most freedom-loving provinces in Canada. And so it's really a shame and an embarrassment to Alberta and to Canada as a whole that these injunctions are in place. Yeah.
So there is actually a relatively small pro-Palestine protest taking place in the park across the street. Some questions remain because, one, they're actually blocking part of the sidewalk, creating their signs. Two, they're arguably disrupting people's right to peacefully use the park. They aren't, in fact, using amplification, but it's very interesting to see that there's no enforcement, no pestering, no problem whatsoever with them gathering in the park. But if these folks were to cross the street from City Hall here, who are protesting for freedom and against mandates, they would likely be ejected from the park. So just another situation where the double standards in the city under Mayor Jyoti Gondek are glaring. So a man who needs no introduction, our very own Mocha here on the street. You're kind of keeping an eye on the ticketing and horn enforcement. They don't seem to be pulling people over, maybe because we caught them doing so a few times. But you said you have seen them writing people's plates down, is that right?
Yes, I have recorded actually them. Right after somebody honks, they go to their notepad and write their license plate, and I caught them doing it multiple times.
So do you think that people are likely, rather than being pulled over, just going to have tickets mailed to them?
I would think so. I mean, we will see throughout the day what will happen, because usually towards the end of the protest, the police really pulls people over, but we'll see.
Awesome. Thanks, Mocha. Appreciate it. So yet another update. Fortunately, we have Mocha on location here, and he was actually over there when the police and authorities approached the pro-Palestine protesters. They actually confirmed with them that because this protest was taking place at City Hall, they indeed would be able to violate the injunction and protest right on the sidewalk, blocking the sidewalk. Just a couple of weeks ago, when these very same protesters were unable to access City Hall and attempted to gather here in Olympic Plaza, they were sent away, moving several locations, eventually finding a home outside of the court center here in Calgary. But again, further proof of the double standards in effect and the selective enforcement. Certain groups in Calgary have a right to protest and have accommodations made. Other groups are targeted, silenced, and limited to extremely strict conditions when protesting. I just want to be absolutely clear that I have no problem whatsoever with these pro-Palestinian protesters being here. Everyone has a right to protest as long as you're not incurring hate or incurring violence, inciting violence. Everyone should have a right to protest in a free society. They should, and they should. It shouldn't be divided and selected by the mayor of the city or city council or politicians or anyone else. It should be decided by our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So the snow is now coming down heavily in Calgary. The weather weather likely to take a bit of a turn for worse after a couple of nice days. Pastor Derek Reimer, and his Mission 7 ministry in these tough weather conditions and times like this serve as a source of solace and nutrition for the unhoused community here in Calgary. They very much look forward to this. Last week, we saw Pastor Derek Reimer arrested for doing exactly this, feeding the homeless and preaching using amplification. It's not loud, it's not offensive, you can hear me very clearly. He was taken into custody, quickly released thereafter. They clarified that he had not violated the injunction in any way, shape, or form and apologized. We thought we'd swing by today to make sure that he doesn't get arrested again and he isn't being harassed and he's being left in peace to feed these unhoused people and to preach the gospel that he holds so dearly to his heart.
For Rebel News and what they're doing. And these guys are telling the other side of the story. And these guys are faithful to their cause. Just sharing what's happening to us with Pastor Art and just many other people around this city, around the world. You guys are amazing.
Well, we appreciate your kind words about Rebel News. That's awesome. We just thought we'd swing by. Have you been largely left alone to do your thing? Has anyone been by?
For the most part, we've been left alone. There's been a couple cops that drove up. One was asking about something on the strip, if we knew where a certain store was, and then some other ones were taking pictures over here. And I just instructed and suggested that we take some pictures and some videos of what they're doing, as it looks like they're trying to build their case and gather evidence, but that's okay. It doesn't deter us. We're going to continue here, using a mic, feeding people, praying for people, and preaching the gospel.
So after 4 weeks of the injunction being in a place very much attempting to stifle people's right to protest, we're still seeing hundreds of people gathering week after week. They're doing their best to comply with the injunction. But first off, what is the impression you've gathered from here? Do you think that people are being suppressed or silenced, or do you think that they're emboldened as ever to continue fighting for freedom?
Well, there's always a level of suppression, right? Even police presence is a bit intimidating. But I think the people here understand that if we don't continue this, if we don't raise collective consciousness, we're in trouble.
What do you make of the selective effort of politicians to say some groups can protest, other groups can't? What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think it's ethical. I don't think it's moral. I don't think it's just. I don't think it's the Canadian way. And I think it has to stop. And I think that everybody, all Calgarians, need to sort of look at the different perspectives, because that's what we're missing right now. Turn off your television, your social media, whatever. Talk to people. Talk to people that come down here and have for the last almost 3 years now, and see what's really going on, because that's how we're getting our reporting. It's boots on the ground to see what's going on. And this has to change, because people aren't going to stop coming to the rallies. I mean, they're just not. We can't. Once you've seen the light, there's no going back to the darkness.
So one of the really cool things that we see at these protests, there's so many people out with their dogs. So before we wrap up on this video, I just wanted you to have a chance to check out this Freedom documentary. If you agree with the hundreds and hundreds of people who are gathering week after week, despite this injunction being in place to stand up for freedoms and to stand up against COVID-19 restrictions, you can make a tax receipt eligible donation to the Democracy Fund as part of their legal effort to challenge vaccine passports in court. Any donations you make there are used to hire top-notch lawyers to fight back against unethical and un-Canadian vaccine passports. If you want to donate, you can do so at fightvaccinepassports.com.